Hello, everybody. We'll get started in a few minutes. Please sign into our agenda and add any items we're interested in discussing today. And we'll just start in a few minutes. We'll just give it one more minute and we'll get rolling. Again, if anyone has anything they'd like to talk about today, please add it to the agenda. That'd be super groovy. All right, the clock on the wall says 10:03. Welcome to the March 1st edition of the OpenSSF's Developer Best Practices Working Group. I'm going to post a link to our agenda in the Zoom chat. If you could sign in and add anything you wanted to talk about. Just one thing so far to talk about, and we'll see what else everyone is interested in discussing today. A note, we've been approached by a group that is being funded by the European Union to do some research in developing an open source security maturity model. So that call will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern in an alternate Zoom call. So if you subscribe to the OpenSSF's Google Calendar, you should be able to see it there. I've also sent a link out to our mailing list. Anyone that's interested in coming and talking to these folks about security maturity models and how that might either leverage our work or how we might be able to contribute to that, everybody's welcome. So we'll see you in about 24 hours from now for all folks that are curious and want to join in. Oh, interesting, Eric. Cool. So I hope to see you there tomorrow. There'll be at least two of us if you do.
I can confirm that the link is well in the agenda, in the calendar. I could see it, and I plan to come.
Cool, awesome. We would love to have you. Oh, and Mr. Wheeler rolls in. Nice of you to join us, sir.
Thank you. Rolls in. Have I eaten too much?
No worries. So again, we're meeting with a group from the European Union tomorrow morning. 24 hours from now, everybody in this group and the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group is welcome to attend and kind of listen to what these folks are preparing and see if there's any collaboration opportunities there. That being said, do we have any new friends that wanted to introduce themselves to the group, or as we're collecting opens?
Yeah, so my name is Eric Tice. I work for Wipro Technologies. I am the Director of Technical Consulting and our Center of Excellence. Some of the folks in here have seen me on other user groups. And several of my team members have actually joined the call as well today. We joined Wipro as an organization, and our OSPO group has joined OpenSSF as a premier member.
Nice.
We're working on a number of initiatives this year. I've got my COE starting to adopt the best practices put forward by this and other groups. But we certainly hope to contribute to some of the best practices, tooling, vulnerability assessment for observability and other components as well. So definitely see a lot of overlaps and are pretty excited to take part and be proactive contributors.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Any other new friends that wanted to say hello today? All right. While Mr. Wheeler furiously types some updates, does anyone have any items they wanted to discuss more in depth today? All right. While David is finishing writing, Spiros, any updates you want to share about the inventory project for the group?
Hi. Not much has changed since in the last 2 weeks. The important thing is we have started writing parsers so that we can automatically add specific projects and specific standards. We've started with parsers for the formats used by several OWASP projects, but if anybody in the call has a project that would fit into OpenCRe.org, or if by any chance there is somebody who works with standards writers out there, please reach out. I would be very interested in writing a parser to automatically add every single section, subsection of your standard or project into OpenCRe.org and make it automatically linked to other things.
Sounds like very worthwhile work. Anyone interested in contributing, please do. Are you ready to share your update, David?
Sure. Step one, can you hear me? Excellent. Okay. No, I don't think I mentioned this before, so I wanted to mention it. We had someone create 12 fraudulent badge entries. I guess is the good news that it's visible enough that people want to start doing some fraudulent things. They clearly knew what they were doing enough to add just enough data to fool the various automated detection systems. Boo hiss. However, one of the main points that we've always made is we make all their answers public so anybody can look at this, and immediately people are asking, wait a minute, this claims this, that's clearly not true, repeat. So we deleted all the badge entries, we've suspended the user account. So sad, but yeah, cool though. It is at least cool that we can
You're famous.
yeah, famous. I'm going to try to take the positive view here. I mean, we've had spammers before, actually many times, but this one's a lot more. This one was a whole lot more eager to work at it. But we do what we can. We had a vulnerability in the dependency. We updated. We'd made a password change that we didn't realize would also make a key rotation change. So that was fun. We now know that. So, I mean, updating dependencies is something we do all the time, but we had to track down why suddenly we couldn't do the updates anymore. I mean, it was a very minor foot shooting, so all is well.
Nice. All right. I see. Yeah.
Actually, there's actually a question in the chat. Is it more work to try to fool the results than complying with the results? Well, I mean, clearly somebody thought it was better. It was easier to fool the results than comply. I'll be honest. I don't think that they were. I mean, the most part, there was no source code. They were just trying to earn badges without actually providing any value to the community. Yeah, hooray. Um, I mean, it's a whole lot easier to not do work than do work, I guess. But I think in the end, while it's not, you want to prevent this perfectly in all possible situations, forcing public visibility is a decent last defense. Uh, so I, that's all I can say about that, I guess. Thanks.
All right. And since you're here now, Laurent, do you want to share any updates on Scorecard and their recent history?
I don't have any specific updates right now. Sorry, did I write something in the? Is there something inside in the meeting notes, or is it from previous weeks?
We typically just march down if any of our member projects have any updates they want to share with the group, or if they're looking for any collaboration. Just an opportunity to get some assistance. But if you don't have any updates, that's no problem.
Yeah, I guess one update I could say is since the V4 release, we've seen a lot more people coming to the bi-weekly meetings, which is really good. But yeah, we're just continuing on. We're working right now on crowdsourcing the weekly scans that we have on Scorecard, crowdsourcing them and using the results of the GitHub action that people install, so we don't have to run everything ourselves. So that's what we're working on right now.
Awesome, thank you. And did Glenn join us? Don't see Glenn today, so we'll get no update on SKF. Does anyone have any opens they want to talk about before I have a proposal for the group?
I had something.
Please.
Does anyone know how to parse an open threat model definition, or does anybody have any libraries for that? I've searched quite a lot, haven't found something that I can use.
You cut off right in the middle. Can you repeat?
Sorry. There is a standard called the Open Threat Model Definition, and I'm trying to find ways to parse it, and that's for OpenCRE, and I haven't found any. Is there any? Does anyone know of any libraries?
Okay, Open Threat Model. Can you give us a link?
Yeah, give me a second.
I do not.
Yeah.
I take it it's not just something like YAML or JSON. It's a bespoke format.
It is kind of bespoke. That's why I was looking for libraries. I'll post it on Slack. I cannot find it in my notes right now. Post on Slack, promise.
You may want to shoot a note to the mailing list to ask, because that casts a little bit broader net than the folks that show up to the call. And hopefully somebody would see that and respond.
Yeah, do you know who it's from?
Not really. I know a couple of commercial and open source threat modeling as code projects that use it. For example, PyTM. I think it's the other one is called Dirius Risk or something. It's based somewhere in Spain. But I haven't found, unless I copy their code and use it as a library, which doesn't sound very sustainable, I haven't found anything else.
Don't know that it's exactly what you're looking for, but Judy posted a note in chat about an awesome threat modeling project on GitHub. I don't know if that's related or in the direction of what you're looking for.
It could have links to libraries. Thank you. That does look awesome.
Any additional topics folks want to talk about?
Not sure if this is the right moment or you want to cover it later, but I've noticed that we haven't talked about our guide on the existing standards for some time. So
I was moving to that and our newbies view
Okay.
next.
excellent.
That's an excellent segue. I will send you a Starbucks gift card later. Thank you. So as Marta mentioned, we had spent a lot of time last year working on the existing guidelines for developing and distributing secure software. And I believe I fixed the link that goes to our, oh, it doesn't go. Oh, well, hold on. I'll give you an even better link powered by my friend Xavier. We have a resource out on our GitLab that echoes the Google document. And so I wanted to take a minute. Is everyone aware of this resource? And do we have any, would we like to spend some time kind of cruising through it, making sure it kind of meets some of our objectives? And if there's anything else we wanted to add, if there were any gaps.
I've noticed there are still some formatting issues, but we can fix it in a merge request.
I am just the worst at trying to track that down. So patch is welcome there. If you see any typos, feel free to submit a pull request to correct them.
You know that I do.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
just
went through and did a
fine.
couple. Thank you. So our intention with this artifact was to identify good sources of secure development practices and any frameworks, training, anything that would be useful to a maintainer or a developer on an open source project, and try to provide them links and suggestions on where to go to get more information. For example, coding in C, coding in Java. I see we have Java twice. That's great. I'll work to fix that. Ruby Rails. So we hit many of the big programming languages, but might not be all of them.
Yeah, on that note, we have the NPM security best practices. We plan to have it like send a PR and maybe have it like in a sort of draft mode where people can start, RFC kind of mode, like request for comment. So we're still thinking about this. In fact, if anyone has ideas about, what should be the process when we add recommendations so that some folks have time to comment, and how do we resolve, arguments or different views? I think that's something that we want to write a little doc on, like what's the process, how long it's going to stay in RFC mode, so that it's clear for everyone. We haven't done so yet, but I'm hoping in the next few weeks we can do that. And if anyone is interested, please let me know so we can discuss.
So CRob, I started making some edits to the Google Doc, not realizing that you had moved it to GitHub. Are we officially saying don't use the Google Doc anymore?
How does the team
So
feel? Is the project mature enough we can now leverage the power of GitHub, or do we want to stay with Google Doc and copy and paste back for now?
I'd prefer GitHub. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think the only challenge is it's a little, there are a number of things that need to be fixed, but I mean, sometime sooner or later we need to make the transition. So
It was interesting going through the doc to markup transition.
You'll have to tell me later. I worked at a system. It worked sort of. I don't know if your system is better or worse than what I came up with.
I used the power of copy paste.
Oh, no.
And then went through and did a little HTML style editing on the formatting.
All right. So apparently you have not been living right. You have now. I don't know.
Karma catching up to me. I must have been a terrible person in a past life.
Yeah, I don't know what sins you committed. All right. So in that case, I would suggest that we clearly mark this as obsolete do not edit. I will do that right now in the Google Doc.
Thank you, sir. Any objections?
So hang on, I'm a bit lost. Which doc and which?
The Google Doc. I'm going to mark the Google Doc with "Do not edit" right at the top.
You're talking about the NPM doc, right?
We're talking about the
existing guidelines.
Guidelines document.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry, I got lost. Thanks.
So going forward, we will officially use pull requests and all the awesomeness of Git to maintain the artifact going forward. So again, as people have suggestions, please submit PRs.
All right. And I am going to include the link within the Google Doc so that people are more likely to find it.
Aeva notes that exporting to text and using a markdown editor for easy reformatting has been a technique used in the past. Has anyone else had anything better? David, you've had some experience doing this with the edX training.
That's right. And actually on the README of the edX, I describe the tools I used and the some alternative approaches I found after the fact too. But it's all painful. It just depends on which kind of pain you want. There are some automated tools that do a decent job in many cases. Yeah, that's what can I say? Yeah, so actually, you know what, I will quickly grab from the edX folks and the edX GitHub conversion and link to that within our notes today, so anybody else wants to find it, it will hopefully help. Okay. I didn't mean to stop the conversation.
Oh, no. So again, looking at the file, aside from typos, do we see anything glaringly missing? Did we miss any awesome languages that are very popular that we want to try to curate some good practice for? Does anyone have any favorite trainings or checklists or guidance around secure coding for any of these languages? Yes, we are missing COBOL.
Missing what?
COBOL.
Yes, we are. Well, I don't know why you're laughing. If anybody likes to get paychecks or use a bank, you're using COBOL. There is.
I remember. I worked in a bank for almost a decade.
The main problem with COBOL really isn't the language; it's the ancientness of the code, and that in many cases, and But all right.
So if anyone's aware of any good guidance on secure coding for COBOL, we would gladly add that in, because that is potentially something someone, developer in a corporate enterprise perspective, may run into.
We actually have in the Open Mainframe project, that's another foundation. Okay, the Linux Foundation has many foundations. One of them is the Open Mainframe Foundation. They have a lot of COBOL stuff. They even have a course on developing on how to on COBOL, learning COBOL. So
Wow.
I think if that would be the group I would immediately connect to. You may be laughing. I'm totally serious.
I'm not laughing.
So
I hadn't heard the word COBOL in many years.
well, yeah, back when the pandemic was first starting, there was a short on COBOL programmers to change everything so we could get checks distributed in the U.S. There was actually a rush on education on COBOL so that these systems could handle new requirements quickly. So I'm gonna have to do a little digging, but I have talked with those folks before. I don't know if they have anything, but they would be the first folks I would ask.
I think that'd be an excellent addition. If you have the opportunity to make a connection, David, I think that would be very worthwhile to add to the guide.
I will try.
You don't know, no worries. And I see Golang's listed twice. Java's also listed twice. We're missing C#, Angular. I think once we have the work that Laurent is working on for the NPM security guide, that might be a nice fit for that section. And we knew that the JavaScript piece was pretty light when we first started out. So if anyone has any ideas, wants to do a little research to see if we can find secure coding guides, secure practices for any of these listed or unlisted languages, please do. Patches are always welcome.
All right, and I am adding to the notes some ways I have found to do the Google Docs to Markdown conversion.
Oh.
There may be better. If I guess Ava's had to do this pain, CRob, you've had to do this pain. This does seem like something that it's one of those things that pops up occasionally within this working group. So if we can find, I will say at the very least, I don't think either ones I just pointed to are well or really maintained at all, but they work. If there's one that's, and the second's the fork of the first one. If there's a better way that's actually being maintained, that'd be awesome. Heck, we could even say we'll take over a fork, but I don't know that we want to do that.
Eric mentions, are we interested in pointing to frameworks like Salsa yet? I don't know in this. I think in general, as a good practice for developers, yes. This artifact is targeted around development languages. So I don't know that that would be exactly the right place, but using the power of adding a new file, we easily can start to create another artifact that talks about framework. So we could get into a conversation on threat modeling or supply chain management, other SDL-like activities.
I actually think it would be okay to mention Salsa. We have in the top part just the general stuff, and we already mentioned the best practices badge and scorecard. So Salsa would be a perfectly reasonable add right there at the top.
I'm not opposed to it.
I'm not suggesting we make it the core, but I think as we discussed, and you mentioned frameworks earlier in this discussion, I think it's important that we at least nod our head towards some of the ones that are gaining traction. And I think there's a potential overlap in making sure that these best practices are adopted by, the tooling working group and some of the others as that progresses. Yeah.
And for our other future project, we're interested in developing kind of a newbie's view to secure development and open source. And Salsa was absolutely pointed out there where Glenn has a graphic of the infinity loop for development, and we were going to tag tools or frameworks at each stage of the development lifecycle. And I think that is absolutely very appropriate there. And again, if we want to put it in the document here at the top, I think that's perfectly appropriate as well. Yes, we are missing Docker specifically. If folks had resources around, we have a section on Kubernetes, that if we wanted to put something around Docker, I think that's perfectly fine.
I think the CNCF best practices has a lot of work on Docker, right?
I believe so.
And they have like a PDF, which is well written. Maybe we could link to that.
Mhm. Any additional thoughts on things we'd like to add?
Granular do we want this document to be? Do we want to break it down only by generic secure coding guidelines on the language? Or do we want to go as far as say, here's how you do encryption in Golang?
I think that would be, if we can entice developers to start using the guide, I think it would be very useful to have common tasks that they would need to go through, like encryption, key management, that type of stuff. So I think that would be a useful build.
Thank you.
Ava, you have something you wanted to note?
I wanted to ask if the group considers machine learning to be in scope to include things like best practices for developing and training models or testing against adversarial attacks on ML.
Ooh. Can I speak up a little bit about this? Because I have done actually quite a bit of research on this a year ago. I mean, I think we should scope this to within security, not just generic model training. Welcome to do so. I even have some slides on this for my graduate class. I have to admit, though, the problem that I have there is I don't believe there's any useful guidance that we can give anyone. In particular, countering adversarial inputs is a research problem with no working solutions.
Respectfully, David, I disagree.
Okay, tell me more. I want there to be solutions.
There have been a number of talks at InfoSec conferences on that topic, describing best practices for building training systems.
Yes.
The practices behind it, not the actual pipeline. The practices behind how you evaluate data into the system to decrease the ease with which someone can trick a model.
This is all right. You're talking about a different problem. So I was talking about specifically adversarial inputs, not subversion of models. Now, subversion of models, I do agree that we could certainly provide advice for that.
I believe they are very tightly coupled problems but we're getting off topic. It sounds like the answer is it's in scope if we can keep the scope of that topic narrow.
Yes. How's this? Totally agree with you. In scope, there are several different problems. There's one particular problem that a lot of folks are worried about that I don't know of any working solution, and I actually did a lot of research. There's a lot of papers that say they have solutions, and then you find out that they work really great as long as there's as long as the adversary is remarkably stupid.
Fair enough.
But
as long as the adversary doesn't know that they're building it that way.
Right. But I totally agree with you that there's definitely ways to counter malicious model training. And there's some other attacks that you can certainly counter. We can do that. And you know what I'll do? I will post a link as soon as I can get it to some stuff that I provide to some graduate students. And I mean, that's very much, and that might be useful for this purpose. So. Because I'm very concerned about this. And, Ava, if it turns out I'm wrong and there have been breakthroughs in this area, I would be so, so delighted. So please prove me wrong, please.
I'll do my best, David.
All right, I'm trying to comb through the chat to make sure I've got areas we highlighted that we're missing. Any additional thoughts or comments about our conversation on the existing guidelines?
Okay, specifically for the machine learning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post an issue against the doc,
Okay.
and with a link to, basically it's a little PowerPoint, but it's where I put a lot of this information, and then we can turn that into some pull requests and such. And it sounds like Aeva knows some information I don't, and well, that's not new for me. So if we can combine it all, that'd be awesome.
I don't claim to have the answers. I just have seen enough talks on this topic at security conferences to have the sense that if there's a body of work out there that even is in its early stages, it's good for us to link to it.
All right, give me one moment to see if I can find Glenn's diagram. Might have been last year. I would like to turn our attention to a topic related to what Spyros notes in the chat. We had talked about this newbie's view of secure development, and that absolutely leads itself into the creation of cheat sheets, linking to tools, all kinds. How did I get here? That's not.
Okay, it's issue 51, by the way, for machine learning.
Man, so many issues. We got issues, man. Whilst I search.
Okay. All right, and I've added a link to the new issue in the in our working guide, in our notes here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
So Aeva, I'm looking at you and begging to comment on that issue.
I'm digging through my old notes to see if I can find stuff from about a year or two ago when I last touched this topic.
Okay. Yeah, I found a whole bunch of people presenting their solutions, and then I found a whole bunch of people showing that, yeah, that solution doesn't work either.
Yeah, and a lot of what I'm remembering is focused to a specific domain.
Right.
Like
Okay.
attacking
Right.
natural language processing or
Okay.
attacking an image. Not a general solution yet.
You know what? Focus solutions are still solutions. Clearly, so I don't think that's out of scope. Now, if this becomes huge, this might be one of those we need to break it off as its own separate thing.
Yeah. And I raised the question, just to step back a second, I raised the question more from the perspective of is ML in scope for this kind of work and the OpenSSF? The broader question of is ML open source? But that may be a conversation for a meeting.
mean, obviously ML isn't necessarily open source, but clearly there's a huge amount of machine learning tools, libraries, and uses that are open source. So I think it's still the answer is yes.
Great.
But if this becomes its own thing, then maybe we pull it out as a see this other doc or something, and maybe coordinate with the. I mean, there's some AI and machine learning groups, but let's see if we need to go there first.
All right, I've completely failed trying to find Glenn's diagram.
You know what? Why don't you shoot an email? He knows how to find it. Let's not waste time right now.
He does. Well, I was looking to try to pull it up. Hold on. So if you would gaze upon our agenda, the second item above under future working group collaboration, the newbies view, we started a PowerPoint that has kind of a rough swag. He's improved the diagram since. But we were thinking about trying to put together some documentation for new developers or people looking to improve themselves. And then the idea of having a graphic on a web page that you could hover over, and as you did, it would list different interesting tools. And this was a very old diagram of his. So what are our thoughts about contributing some time to start to enhance this with things like, as Spiros mentions, cheat sheets. So if there was a cheat sheet for good practices in key rotation within a Kubernetes cluster, you could kind of attach that into the diagram and underneath the CI/CD portion or the maintenance portion of the life cycle. So what are our thoughts about working towards something like this?
I like that, and I would like to add also a support of not a model of development where you do not do continuous deployment, where you do a release and then you do maintenance of the release.
Yeah, not everyone has embraced DevOps yet. That's correct. Good point, Marta.
And not everyone, and in fact, quite many important projects that are not doing proper releases and backporting or back fixes, causing a lot of problems in certain cases.
So we'd have an 8 and a circle. Your traditional SDL circle arrow. All right, so what computers instead of could you ask your question to the group, Spiros?
Yeah, sure. I just didn't want to interrupt. So I have a PR open for the CRE project, and apologies for repeating the project. It's just the conversation this time is around mapping things to each other, which is what we do. So I have a PR open for the CRE project to present, well, pretty much the underlying structure, which is a graph, as a graph. We could start, we could transform this to map it to circles or the SDLC, which is kind of great. That's how we started manually with OWASP projects. And if we do this manually, it will be obsolete very soon because projects fall out of support or things change. But if we do this using OpenCRE by mapping specific projects to specific CREs and things like that, we can sort of automatically check if a project on GitHub or GitLab has downloads or is active, and indicate that in CRE. And this is not very hard to do. Luckily, both GitHub and GitLab have a very decent API. Yeah, just that.
So Scorecard actually does this in the check called packaging. So I don't know if that's useful for you to reuse, but yeah, just letting you know that we do this on in the Scorecard check.
Oh, that's great. Let me check it. Thank you.
I was on mute. Excellent. I will commit to the group to get Glenn's proposed diagram with phases, and we can start brainstorming together as a group what practices, what checklists, what tools, and what other foundation projects or external projects are applicable in these different areas, so we can start to figure out how we want to tie this together. And I think wherever there's an opportunity to automate and keep things continually refreshed is best, as opposed to manually, much like my journey from Google Docs to Markdown, which was a very manual process. If we can avoid that, that's better. So I will get that list and that diagram so that we can look at that and start to directly contribute ideas to how we might start shaping this. But do we all agree that these two things, updating the guide and then having this some type of series of artifacts around first new developers, are those two worthwhile things we want to collaborate on together? All right.
By the way, CRob, I've been trying to do two things at once. I'm about to send an email to the leads of the COBOL programming project from the Open Mainframe project.
Nice.
That lead and co-lead. There's no guarantee that they'll have this information, but they seem like the right folks to contact. And I'll also contact the Open Mainframe project in general. We'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, and they might be interested in collaborating and putting something together if they don't have anything.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also going to ask them if there is something to put it in their course.
Nice. All right, folks. Any final thoughts, comments, anything else we want to talk about today before we adjourn? Computer explodes with alarms. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's time and contributions today. Remember that tomorrow we're meeting with the folks from the EU. If you're interested in talking about open source security maturity models, we would love to have you. Details are on the mailing list and also in the Foundation's calendar. You can get a link to the Zoom call. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll have hopefully some objects to look at next time to collaborate on. Cheers, all.